So in my hand here, I have a Philodendron Spiritus Sancti seedling grown from our buddies at Redleaf Exotics in Tennessee. They were the first ones to successfully pollinate and grow from seed Philodendron Spiritus Sancti in the United States, which is crazy, super cool. This is a plant that is so endangered and so rare. There's only 6 left in the wild. And so the fact that they were able to produce hundreds of seedlings and spread them out throughout the world is really, really exciting because now we can just take a step further towards conserving this really amazing species. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this seedling and I am going to mount it on a piece of cork. Typically where Philodendron Spiritus Sancti is from in Brazil, they grow as hemiepiphytic or epiphytic plants, basically on a tree trunk or up in the canopy. So my idea is by mounting it on cork and keeping it consistently moist at all times, it should grow pretty well that way. Some may say it's kind of crazy to take a chance and the risk of it not working out, but I'm pretty confident in this method of growing plants like this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I would go through the steps to mount the plant. So first I selected my piece of cork. When looking for a piece of cork, you want to look at overall size in relation to the plant. So right now this seedling is small, but it is going to get pretty large. Dominic at Redleaf Exotics, the mother plant that this came from, has leaves that are over 4 feet long. So you do have to think about that. Because of that, I chose a long piece and I'm going to mount it down at the bottom so that it has plenty of time to grow up, and as it matures and by the time that it gets to the top and the leaves are big, this could then be attached to an even larger piece of cork if we needed it to. So then I've collected a couple different plant materials that I could use in building this mount. So I could mount it by itself, but I really want this mount to be a statement piece, so I'm going to pair the Spiritus Sancti with a couple other plants. So what I like to do before I think about actually attaching anything is get an idea, place the plants without tying them down or gluing them or anything like that, so that I can get a feel of, you know, what it's going to look like, where I need to put everything, and kind of build a plan and start that way. So my Spiritus Sancti is going to go here, so just because I don't want to damage it, I'm going to use this in place of that. This is Tillandsia duratii. I think I'm going to put on this way. If it was a smaller Tillandsia, or if there were more parts that were flush against the cork, I could use super glue. Not all types of super glue are the best or safe for plants, but this Loctite super glue, it's clear, it's a gel. It's made from a cyanobacteria type material that they actually originally created in World War II to use on soldiers' wounds. So basically if you got ripped open in battlefield, they would super glue your wound shut so that it wouldn't get infected. Jesus. So because of that, it's non-toxic basically. So I could use this to attach other Tillandsia or something, but because it is such a large Tillandsia and it is kind of all over the place and not flush against here, I'm going to drill holes so that I then can run wire through it and use the wire to hold it on. So I am going to use the Sharpie and mark on the cork just with dots of where I would want to drill a hole so that I can secure this on. So we're going to do one here, here, and here. Alright, as well I have this Dendrobium loddigesii marble. It's a variegated orchid. Seems pretty cool, seems fun. I think I'm going to, now it's already mounted on this piece, so I am going to take it off of this mount, and I think I'm going to put that up here. I'll go ahead and remove it from this mount now. Again, I could glue this, but I think I'm going to actually wrap this one with sphagnum moss so it can provide a little bit more moisture. I will drill holes here again and use the wire to hold it down, and I'll just put a tiny bit of sphagnum moss over these roots to provide a little bit of moisture. So I'm going to make marks again for where I want to drill to be able to run the wire through to hold it. So now I think I'm going to put some creepers. There's the great thing about mounting things on cork. So cork, if you don't know, is the outside bark of a cork tree. It's actually a type of oak native to Mediterranean areas. And they sustainably harvest and peel off the outside bark, which is this cork, and so naturally it has a bunch of great divots and everything in it that you can kind of shove plants, and the plants love to grow roots into it and attach to it. It's a great, absolutely great, super durable, long-lasting growing media. I recommend if you have a plant and you want to try to grow it mounted, do it. So this is a Ficus Quercifolia. That isn't super rare, but I think it's fun looking. Plus, if it does attach, it'll give it, you know, fill in the little spaces. So what I'll do with this one is, there's a pocket in here, so I'll line up a couple of the ends and I'll shove them in there with sphagnum, and then these pieces I'll glue down to where I want them so that they kind of stay in place. So, as a rough draft, I think that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. And so what I like to do is, I mean, I've made mounts before with like 16 different species or things on it, and so, especially when you're working with super small orchids, I like to take a picture of my rough draft so that then when I'm building, if I need to refer back to it, I have that. What I'll probably do, now that I have this rough draft, at the end for finishing touches, once I attach the Spiritus Sancti and I've wrapped it around and have some sphagnum laying there, I probably will put some of this miniature orchid, this is Trichosalpinx, chamaelepanthes, or some pieces of this really sun-bleached Hoya curtisii. I think is so pretty, really exotic looking. And I just like to bring variety to it, so we'll see. So let's start building and go from there. And so now I need to drill my holes. So I'm not going to drill holes down here for the Spiritus Sancti because I'm actually going to wrap that using fishing line. So I'm just going to go around either side, whereas these with the wire to attach these two up here, I do want to drill the holes. So finding where I had previously made my Sharpie marks, I'm going to go ahead and drill through. So you can see I made the 4 holes in there that I'll run the wire through to secure them. So that's the same up here. And then also I had made a hole previously up top where I'm going to put the wire at the end so that it has a hook to hang it. I think I want to go ahead and lace some of the wire through. I like making the pieces long and then I can always trim them at the end. Alright, I'm preemptively putting these wires through, that way when I go to wrap the Spiritus Sancti, I can move this piece as little as possible. I just told Zach earlier, I was like, you know, just because it's a Spiritus Sancti and it's super rare, doesn't mean that we should treat it any different. Like, the plant doesn't know that it's a super rare plant. I mean, maybe you know. I don't know. Not enough people have told you yet. You're still young. You know, you haven't been told how great you are. But it is kind of nerve-wracking, trying to not let it show, but it is kind of nerve-wracking thinking about doing this. And I'm excited for like 3 months from now, you know, be able to show like how it's grown. All right, so here's the plan. This is being grown right now completely in 100% sphagnum moss. If I was potting it into a different potting media, I would want to remove as much of the sphagnum as possible, because what can happen is if I leave that ball of sphagnum inside another sort of potting media, it can stay too wet and actually rot out the plant. But because I'm going to mount it with sphagnum and it's growing in sphagnum, I'm going to try to disturb the roots as little as possible. As well, I will be securing this with clear fishing line. And so when you go to do that, you want to first do what I call an anchor knot. So around where I'm going to be mounting it, which was here. I'm going to take this, back, and do this anchor knot. I call it an anchor knot because it's actually tied and secure to the base. So even if I wrap this around, it's not going to unravel, essentially. All right, as well, when mounting something to cork, usually you want to put the back or like root side where it's growing flush up against. So like with orchids, you usually want to put the pseudobulb or whatnot up against, so that when it grows, it basically grows into the cork as opposed to out away from the cork. Of course, depends on how you want to, you know, display the plant. But for this, because I want the Spiritus Sancti to eventually attach to the cork, we are going to mount it up against as opposed to away. So just undid this guy, and you can see here we have roots. Look at all these roots. Yay. I'm going to take the top layer that's green off just for aesthetic purposes. And so, because I have roots coming out of this area here, I'm going to call that the back. Alright, so now to help get it flush, I am going to put a little bit of sphagnum here. As well, even though it is rooted, as you may know, I love rooting hormone. So it doesn't hurt. Help this guy out a little bit. There's a fan blowing. Take some of my long fiber. Previously, I already moistened it some sphagnum moss. Alright, so before I start wrapping it, I'm going to put sphagnum where I want to kind of encase this. Also, wouldn't hurt, this is a seedling, so I'm not going to use a lot, but I am going to put some time-release fertilizer actually in here and trap it in so that when it needs nutrients, it has access to a little bit of it. Okay, and then at the end I will clean up and remove any like long pieces that are outside, but I think I'm happy with this. So now I'm going to start the wrapping process. Alright, so now that I'm happy with the placement of this, I'm going to go ahead and start the wrapping process. I like to keep my spool by my feet so that I can wrap it around. Some people like to have it next to them. Some people like to take a large strand and then cut it off so that they don't have to worry about the spool. I don't want to restrict myself with the amount of fishing line that I can use, so I keep mine down there. And now what we're going to do essentially is just feed this around, keeping it taut at all times. Alright, so before I finish it off, I do want to test it. Seems pretty good, a little wobbly around the base. Alright, so I think I'm happy with that. And see, this whole time I've been keeping this fishing line taut, because if I was to let go and let it get loose, the string will form a bunch of bubbles and stuff, and it won't look as aesthetically pleasing. So I am going to clean up these pieces of sphagnum that are sticking out, but it seems like it is doing what we wanted. It is pretty secure, and it's growing up, and so basically what it will do, hopefully, will root and then eventually kind of go like this, and go up, growing up the cork. So now I am going to take my fishing line, giving me enough room, and cut it. And so now I need to secure it. So I'm going to wrap it around. And then ideally you'd like to find that anchor knot that you used originally, which is here. And so I'm going to take this through that. Put that there. Now I'm going to clean up these long fibers that I don't like. Keeping in mind, now I tied it off completely. If I was to accidentally cut just one of these loops, the entire thing will come unraveled and I'll have to start all over again. So some people will just, you know, snip it off with their fingers so you don't accidentally break the fishing line. So now we're left with that. I think it's pretty aesthetically pleasing.
Oh yeah.
I love it. So cute. So now I will go ahead and attach the other guys. And then after I attach these guys with the wire, I'll then do the finishing touches with the orchid and the Hoya. Ah, so cool! Little mounted Philodendron Spiritus Sancti seedling. I love it. Alright, so now I'm going to put on this duratii. Actually, let me do the Dendrobium, the variegated orchid first, because I want to use sphagnum with that, and I don't want any of that to get in the way of this. So, using rooting hormone facing away from the fan. I'm happy with that placement. It's cute. So like I said, you know, if I wanted it to grow like super attached, I could have flipped it and had it, instead of swooping out, swooping in up against it. But I like the idea of this one kind of cascading out over the foliage of the Spiritus Sancti, so we're going to go with that. So I'm just securing now exactly where I want the placement and the tightness of this. Now I am covering roots and pseudobulbs, so I want to be careful not to tie it too tight, but then I'm going to take this in the back, twist them together. Gorgeous. Divine. Here I'm going to try to secure it on you know, the main stem part and not crush leaves. So let's see how this goes. See, I mean, I've been doing this for years, and it's still, it takes time, it takes patience, and you gotta figure it out. Like, I want to attach this and I want it to look great, so I'm taking my time and I'm rearranging and I'm doing it at my own pace. and just making sure that it looks good and it doesn't, you know, affect the health of the plant in a negative way. Again, I twisted it in the back, and then I will twist these together. Cute! And it looks pretty good so far. So we're almost there. Now we can go ahead and attach the ficus, the Quercifolia. So see, I had laid it out in the way I wanted it, so I could remember. I think we have 5 strands here. So we're going to put it in this crevice here. So I'm going to put a couple things of fertilizer in there. And then we're going to Alright, so now they're in place. I'm going to take a little bit of sphagnum moss. I'm not going to attach this in any other way other than just pushing this in here. Alright, so let's put you here. So I put maybe a couple droplet size worth of this gel. I really like the gel more than just the liquid because it stays in place. And I'm gonna hold it here probably 15-20 seconds. It does take a couple minutes to actually cure, but I just need it to stay in place as I glue the rest on. So, pretty good, we're getting there. Now I'll just do some finishing touches, but yeah, that looks really good. And now in the months by the time that the Spiritus Sancti is grown up and attached to the roots, who know what the ficus will have done. It may not even make it, you know, unless this is really getting misted multiple times every single day. It may crisp up, it may not actually attach, but that's the natural process of it. We're gonna do it now, and you know, as this mount grows and evolves, we will have to potentially change it up later on. But I really like that, so now we're gonna do some finishing touches. Okay, so I decided I'm actually not happy with this wire showing as much, so what I'm going to do is I'm gonna take some Hoya curtisii, tuck it in here, and drape it over. So let me pick out, I love this. I mean, this curtisii is super sun stressed, but I mean, look at these colors, it's wild. Now I want, so we have hanging here, we have hanging here, so I'm going to do another piece down at the bottom here to hang off at the end. Horticulture is defined as both combining the beauty and science of plants, and so mounting is definitely a really good example of that. It's a blending of growing the plants how they want to be grown in a way that's really aesthetically pleasing and just beautiful to look at. This is one of my favorite things to do. I love anything that you can grow a plant and make it look beautiful, but especially something like this where it's basically a statement art piece. Amazing. Alright, and instead of gluing these, because this is sphagnum, I'm just going to take tiny bit of sphagnum, roll it up, and shove it on top of there to hopefully keep those secured in. Alright, before I stylize these and lay these down, I now do want to put Trichosalpinx chamaelepanthes. Super cute miniature orchid, and you can see how it grows from these strands that just hang off. And so basically we just want to find a spot like down here where you can see roots coming, and I'm gonna just cut those pieces off and shove them in the sphagnum, and hopefully they will root and stay there. Rooting hormone. So, final result, very, very happy with it. So we got 6 species on here. Ficus, Quercifolia, Dendrobium, loddigesii marble, Tillandsia, duratii, Trichosalpinx, chamaelepanthes, and of course our Philodendron Spiritus Sancti. Now the last step is we're going to go ahead and mist it in. That's how you mount a Philodendron Spiritus Sancti. I love it. Stay tuned, we'll keep you updated as it grows and progresses.